Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here at my next Avatar in Review episode. This one's going to be episode 6 for The Legend of Korra, Book 2 Spirits. First of all I should probably just say that I actually literally just recorded this video, but then when I checked the camera to basically end the recording, my camera had frozen or something like that, so that whole recording was lost, and I really felt like I nailed this video perfectly the first time round. So obviously I'm trying to record this immediately after that kind of failed recording, so I'm gonna try and hit most of the same points I hit, but I don't think I'm gonna be able to nail it as well as I did the first time round. So yeah, anyway, this is the DVD cover, pretty nice, and there's the back cover. So yeah, Book 2 Spirits, my favorite book of Korra, and most people's probably least favorite book of Korra. I personally, in terms of my thoughts on the book, don't understand why that's the case. I think Book 2 is fantastic. I don't think it's perfect, it's not without its problems. I definitely have some problems myself, which I'll get into. But I think overall, in general, it is so strong it's mostly so strong that it makes up for any negatives that are actually present in this book. I think this is a really important book of Korra, because it is Book 2 Spirits. It's the book of Avatar in general, not just Korra here, where we learn basically everything we know about the spirit world is because of this season. Realistically, you look back on Avatar: The Last Airbender, and some of the stuff it did with spirits was just confusing. The introduction episode for Spirits 107, Spirit World, is confusing now when you look back on it. It's just wait, Aang is a blue spirit, but he's in the physical world, but he's in the spirit world, or is he not? It's really confusing. This episode just kind of clears it up, and kind of really, looking back on it, makes it just that opening episode in terms of Avatar and Spirit World is just, what is it? This just makes everything so much clearer in regards to the origin of the Avatar and just the nature of the spirit world and spirits in general. I think it's really well done. So yeah, let's get into the points. I'm going to start off with my negatives, then I'll talk about the negatives that I think a lot of people have about Book 2, but that I don't agree with, and then I'll get into my overall positives, and that should cover basically everything. So first of all, my negatives. One of the negatives I have is just Asami's character arc in the book. I don't like that she starts off having this character arc with Varrick, and then it just kind of disappears basically the second the Masami get back together thing happens in episode 6. Ultimately, it's not, I don't think it's a major problem, just because I think it's very clear when you look at the whole series of Korra that the writers really didn't have much of a plan for Korra, Asami, in terms of character arcs over all 4 books. They kind of just ended up going okay, we have a solid character arc with her father in Book 1, we'll resolve that in Book 4, and then we'll just try and do whatever we can in Book 2 and 3. She's just Korra's friend in Book 3, and in Book 2 we'll involve her because of her business stuff with Varrick, and then romance to take it away. I think it's a problem just because there is potential with this business plot with Varrick, her and Varrick making this big decision. She's trying to improve future industries after her father ruined the reputation, so she makes a deal with the best business person in the world after Hiroshi, which is Varrick, and then he ends up basically trying to take over her company, and succeeds, and eventually is captured, and she gets her company back, maybe. And that's the problem. You don't really see a lot of Asami towards the end of the book, and she ends up kind of just falling out of the story, because you don't even know if Asami is with Mako or not at the end of the book, even though that's addressed. And then you don't know, does she get her company back or not at the end? It's really confusing, and so that's a big problem I have with the book. Big is exaggerating it. It's just a problem I have with it. She has an arc set up and it doesn't really get resolved. It only really gets resolved in Book 3 when it's confirmed that she got her company back. No mention of where Varrick's company is during all of this. I'm not really sure. Other problem, this is probably the biggest problem actually, and that is just the romance. This is the book that the romance just became a problem with the series. I talked in the last video about how I don't really have a problem with the romance in book one, but this is where the problems come in. This book, and it's not just like one relationship, or it's basically the way relationships are done in general in the show. The main thing is obviously Mako and Korra's relationship, and ultimately I think the problem is just that in book one you see the start of their relationship. In this book you get to see the end of their relationship. What about the 6 months where apparently they were a happy couple? Is that just meaningless? Because I really don't think this book suggests in any way that they were fighting for 6 months and this is just the most recent in 6 months of fighting. To me, the way I take this book is just that this crazy situation over Korra dealing with the fact that there's a kind of war, civil war between the two water tribes, and her trying to make decisions about that, created issues between her and Mako that led to them breaking up. So I really don't get why, the decision behind that because that's really just showing drama. You had drama surrounding them getting together as a couple. You had drama surrounding their breakup. You are just using this relationship for drama purposes and not it actually being an important character connection between two characters, which a relationship is meant to be. And then another problem I have with that is just where it goes from there. To me, what this book was leading to, in my opinion, was that, okay, Mako and Korra are both kind of at wrong in this relationship in terms of the way they break up. Mako just can't, at this moment, see the stress that Korra is under with regards to having to make such big decisions regarding the fate of the world. And Korra, in dealing with all of this stuff, can't see the importance of Mako's job and decisions he has to make, which to her aren't as big as her decisions. And that's where the rift between them comes in. But it's all based around the fact of this crazy situation that happens that causes these little issues to come out. And so I felt like, okay, you had the breakup happen fairly early on in the book. Both characters develop over the course of this book. Korra a lot, Mako maybe not as much, but he does develop. And then the two were ultimately going to develop and then realize the kind of fault about the breakup and kind of get back together. So right up until the scene where basically the second breakup happens, even the very early parts of that scene, I was like, okay, and now they're going to say they're going to get back together, they're going to apologize for what happened before. But no, it's a second breakup, and they're just like, no, what we learned over the whole of this time is that we just don't work. And I'm just like, wait, what? Are you just abandoning the fact that you were together for 6 months and apparently had one big fight over one issue that is never going to come up again? It was just baffling to me and just didn't make a lot of sense. And that ultimately, that is the problem with some of the romance early on in Korra, is just that it just didn't make a lot of sense. All they were trying to do with it was create drama, and it didn't work. It's similar with Bolin and Eska, which is the other main ship in this book, in that you basically had them break up. Obviously, Bolin abandons them at the wedding day, and they're trying to make it out. It's this really quirky romance, and that's their kind of first breakup. Then, in the heat of action towards the end, their lives are at risk. Bolin realizes that he actually does care about Eska, and she actually cares about him more than just a kind of slave way. And you have this real connection between the two, and they're like, okay, I can actually get behind this relationship now. They're going to get together, and it's going to be more of a real relationship from here on out. And then you're like, okay, they're a couple now. That's great. The battle's over. The day is saved. They come together, and you're like, okay, they're going to like admit they love each other, or agree that they're going to continue dating or something like that. And then they basically just say, no, I need to go back to my... Eska says, like, no, I need to go back to my mother, but you'll always be in my heart. Sorry. And I'm just like, this is the problem, book 2. You had two relationships that, in my opinion, were set up to just, like, create a problem with them and resolve it, and the characters are better for it, and the relationships are better for it. And then you just end the book by just no relationship. It was just baffling to me, and to me, I was just kind of like, once they made the decision in like book 3 and 4 to change the way they did romances, I was just like, fine, great, stop dealing with all this drama. And that's what they did in book 3 and 4. You can clearly see that they made the romances less drama focused and more about actual connections between the characters. In that they specifically, like with Opal and Bolin, they make it out that, okay, Bolin usually go for the crazy types and that doesn't work out so much. Why not like, go out with Opal? She seems more normal and this may work out better for you, and it does. And they just don't try and do as much with the relationships. But the problem is, you could have done something good with them here. There was a way to save them, but you just did it wrong in a way where it was just confusing and made so little sense. Then, once Mako and Korra break up, you have the whole issue of just like, they try and get Mako and Asami back together, which for me just comes out of absolutely nowhere and adds nothing to the story. That is the biggest problem in the entire series with the romance, because this was there just to create drama when Korra came back into the picture and didn't remember things. That was the only reason this was there. You made it very clear in book 1 that Mako cares more about Korra than Asami in a romantic sense. So this was baffling to me. It made absolutely no sense. So yeah, that was a problem. But again, the romance, as I've said before in the previous video, the romance is not actually that big of a plot in this book in general. Like in the previous book where it's basically confined to episode 5, once again, it's almost completely confined to episode 5 and 6 in this case. And then there's a little scene here or there. And that leads into my next point. Overall negative, episode 5 and 6 are probably 2 of the weaker episodes of Korra overall. I'd probably say they're the second and third worst episodes of Korra overall. Remembrances obviously being bottom. And not that they're bad, there are still cool aspects to them, in that I like the overall sting operation to try and kind of find out what happened and like try and find out what Varric is up to. And I like in Peacekeepers the kind of political aspect. You get a lot of why characters are making certain decisions. I like that. But because so much of the romance drama and the bad stuff about the romance has happened in these episodes, it just becomes a problem, and I don't like them. So they're my 3 main complaints about the book. Just so there you have it. Asami's character arc kind of disappearing, the romance in general not being the best, and episode 5, Peacekeepers, and episode 6, The Sting, being 2 of the weaker episodes of the series. But other than that, I have nothing but real praise for the series. So next, as I said, I'm going to cover negatives that I've seen a lot of other people talk about this book that I don't agree with at all. First and foremost, when I have to get out of the way, Unalaq is a boring / bad villain who is the worst villain we've had in the entire series. I couldn't disagree with this any more than I do. I just can't agree with this in any sense. I think Unalaq is a perfectly fine villain. Maybe I wouldn't say he's the best villain of all the 4 we've got, but he's interesting in his own way, and that's the thing about all of the Korra villains. They're all interesting in their own way. Definitely Unalaq is not the most charismatic villain compared to the other ones, but I think that's the point of him. He's just meant to be this spiritual guy who wants to promote spirituality in the world, but goes about it in an extreme way. And ultimately, that's the idea for every villain in Korra. Equality in an extreme way. Freedom in an extreme way. Security in an extreme way. And then with Unalaq, spirituality in an extreme way. But what I really like about Unalaq is how his ideals link into every single bit of this book. The themes of book 2 overall are spirituality and family. And he perfectly defines that, because he is basically the most spiritual character in this book, and he ends up being Korra's teacher with regards to spirituality, and important for her going forward in terms of that. As much as he's using her earlier on to open the portals, he does actually have to teach her to be more spiritual to make that happen. And so a lot of what happens early on is that he's actually teaching her the positive parts of his ideals, because if he goes into his extreme parts, he reveals himself as a villain to her or too early on. So he has to actually just deal with her positive spirituality. And she takes that on and uses that towards the end of the book, but I'll get to that later on. So that's cool, that spiritual part of him. And then with regards to the family part of it, he's the only character in this entire book who just doesn't care about family. And it's really clear to see this when you basically think of this book in a way as the main situation you have in this book is that Korra is put in between her father and her uncle in terms of who's going to be her like guardian teacher type character. And so Tonrock, her father, is all family, no spirituality. They specifically point that out, that he's not spiritual, and purposefully tells Korra not to be spiritual because he's like he he thinks like the spirits are bad and evil, and you kind of see that. And then with Unalaq, he's all spiritual, no family, because you see in this book that he tries to get Eska and Desna to help him to basically force open one of the spirit portals, and Desna is nearly killed, and he doesn't care. He doesn't care when he basically sacrifices his role as their father to be the Dark Avatar. He doesn't care about them. You really heavily see that when Tonrock is willing to, okay, Korra's spiritual, I'll at least try to be maybe more spiritual. It's not really addressed, but he can respect that his daughter needs to become more spiritual because of her role, and so tries to find a balance between the two. And that's what Korra's basically development over the course of the whole book is. It's about finding a balance between family and spirituality. And I just really like that contrast between the characters, that you have Korra trying to be the balanced one in the middle, Tonrock completely on the side of family, and then Unalaq completely on the side of spirituality. And then within that, you have this guy who, just think of what he's trying to do. He's correct in terms of like the world is becoming more and more focused on technology and not as spiritual as they should be, and so wants to promote spirituality in the world. And one of those scenes, and I think it's episode 1, or I think it's episode 1, where he actually like calls out at the banquet, like this place is basically like a kind of like, what does he say, like cesspool of like unspiritual people or something like that. And it's true basically about the people, because with Tonrock in the lead there, he's not promoting any spirituality in the south, and so he comes to promote that, but he does it in a way where he's trying to do that under the premise of basically freeing Vaatu and promoting darkness across the world, and almost erasing humanity at the expense of to put spirits above them. And then that's where Vaatu comes into things, and this is also our book where we kind of have co-main villains, in the fact that Unalaq's more of the character, and then you have Vaatu, who is literally the personification of evil in this series, and how they merge together, and how you get this really cool idea of just Dark Avatar versus Light Avatar. That's a really spiritual conflict. But again, you come back to both themes, and ultimately this is the only book of Korra where Korra fights a villain who's also a member of her own family. And just when you make all these connections to the themes, Unalaq starts to become this like perfect villain for this book. Just that Korra has to fight a member of her own family, and even by the end, when she defeats him, using techniques and ideals that she learned from him, she doesn't hate him because she has to basically kill a member of her own family. And so, when she says go in peace, it's not aggressive at all. She wants him to go in peace, and it's a really emotional way to end the book. And then after that fight, she decides to keep the portals open because that's ultimately Unalaq's ideals, and she realizes that he's fundamentally correct in the sense that the world needs to be more spiritual. He just tries to do it in the wrong way, and I'm going to do it in the right way. When everyone else, other character, would say to leave the portals closed, including Juan. And that's just a really strong... Ultimately, Unalaq is a really strong villain for Korra to overcome because she learns from him. She's the only villain, until she actually learns fully about it in book 4, that she actively learns from and uses ideals from. So I really like that about Unalaq. I think that's a really cool aspect of his character. He is also responsible for probably, in my opinion, the best villain fight in Korra at the end of a book, because the way that fight transitions from it being just Korra versus Unalaq to Korra being Dark Avatar versus Light Avatar to being Korra's spirit giant battle is amazing. I think it's the best fight because it's given the most time, it's giving the most impact to the world in terms of, like, if Korra loses, the world is over. There's no stakes like that in any of the other books of Korra. Yes, this nation will be taken over, this group of people will be gone, but fundamentally, nothing is bigger than the stakes in Book Two Spirits because the fate of the world is at balance. And so I just really love Unalaq as a villain. I think he's super underrated just as a character in general. As I said, yes, he's not the most charismatic villain in the sense of Amon had his amazing speeches and like really got over his ideals, and you really understood where he got so much support from because of that. Zahir and the other villains are cool, like because of their powers, and they're all about freedom, trying to take out the villains, and they're all kind of like edgy, and so Unalaq doesn't have that. It also doesn't have the kind of cruelty, power kind of leadership that say a Kavira had. But I think the point is just that he is just meant to be a normal guy. So I can really appreciate Unalaq as a villain, definitely. But yeah, that's one issue I wanted to touch on. Next one is the idea that a lot of people say that Korra is really annoying at the start of this book, and a lot of people really dislike her character at the start of this book. I wouldn't say I like completely disagree with this one. I think it's just the level to which you dislike her. I think you're meant to realize that she's not fully correct and maybe like that. But I think also a lot of the reason I kind of like disagree with it in some way is because a lot of the people who say this also tend to not understand where she's coming from with the way she feels about some of these things. In the sense of like, how can you not understand why she's so angry at her father and mentor over finding out that they are responsible? They lied to her about why she was kept secluded in the southern compound and didn't travel the world like all the other avatars. They told her that Aang made that decision when he didn't. And even in this book, when she finds out the truth, they still don't tell her the whole truth. She has to wait until book 3 to find out that it was because that they secluded her because of the first Red Lotus attack. So even in this book, they're still lying to her. They still don't trust her enough with all of this information. And that's a problem. So you understand how she is close to being a fully realized avatar in this book, and they're still keeping stuff from her and treating her like she's a child when she is. While she's still like a young teenager, she still is mature enough to do all this stuff, and you have to give her the opportunity at least to do some of this stuff. And it's the same with the not being told about her father's past and stuff like that. You understand why she's angry because she's just not being told all of this stuff. I already covered what I consider to be the issues with her and Mako's relationship. Again, I think I can understand from both sides. I don't blame Korra or Mako for what happened there. They were both at fault. But in general, I understand why Korra is like this early on in the book, because you have to present a kind of situation where she's strong, but she still has a long way to go. And so it does create a situation where Korra at the start of this book compared to Korra at the end of this book, it is the biggest development she goes throughout the entire series as a character in terms of change. And I can appreciate these early episodes because, as much as, yes, at times maybe she makes some annoying decisions, you understand where those decisions come from. She wants to protect her nation, her parents, her family, and you understand why she's frustrated with them. And this leads into what ultimately is one of my biggest positives about this season. Korra's character arc in this book is amazing. It's really strong. This idea of her learning from Unalaq to be spiritual, and she learns the origin of the Avatar and learns how strong Wan was, But ultimately, the key part of her development is in this book is that she's able to see herself as strong even without Rava, the Avatar spirit. That's the key part at the end of this book. When the past lives are taken away from her, and she thinks that she's on her own, she thinks she's failed as the Avatar completely because she's messed up this thing that's been going for so long. That she herself is not strong unless Rava is with her, which she's not at this point, and she blames herself for everything. And then Tenzin comes in and just basically tells Korra what he learned from his father just a few moments ago in the episode, that you are not defined by being Rava. You are strong yourself, even without Rava. Rava helps you to be stronger, but you are strong on your own as well. It's not what you are, it's who you are. That's the kind of thing that they get across here, and that's a really cool thing that this arc of Korra's teaches you at the end. It's so emotional to see Korra, her own spirit as okay, sorry about that cut this time round. The video works, so the first 20 minutes of the video are saved, but battery ran out that time, so yeah, I'll try my best to continue from where I left off. I think I was talking about Korra and her own spiritual power in regards to Korra's character arc. I just like that she kind of has the opposite of what she did in the book 1 finale, in that the book 1 finale, Amon took her bending away, and her first connection to the Avatar, past avatars, Rava basically, gives to her bending back. But here, she defeats the villain without any help from the past avatars. She does it on her own, with the power of her own spirit, and really shows how powerful she is. I just think that's a really cool character arc to have, that you just showcase an avatar doing something without the power of the avatar, and you show how powerful they are on their own. Really got across how strong Korra is on her own. But yeah, I love Korra's character arc in book 2. Next point I want to make in terms of a positive is that, and it's also, I suppose, one of the negatives that people have about book 2 that I don't agree with, and that is the kind of, a lot of people say that the first half of the season until beginnings is fairly slow and a little bit boring. I disagree, because I like it because it's character focused and really addresses the one theme of the book, which is family, really well. I also like it because it has a similar, this book in general has a similar format to book 3 Fire from Avatar, in that you have more character focused episodes for the first half of the season, and then really action-packed episodes to end the season that are really amazing. And book 2 has that same format. So the early episodes being kind of family focused, the reason I say that is because these are the episodes where, like, the B plot of most of the episodes is Tenzin either having an episode where he bonds with his children, Ikki, Jinora, Milo, or with one of his own siblings, Kaya and Bumi. You have a scene where he does that. And then on the other side of things, you have Korra, of course, dealing with the issues that she's having with her father, the issues that she's having, obviously, with her uncle that happened, and even her mother comes into play a bit, which I really appreciate. Without these early episodes, we don't know a lot about Kaya, we don't know a lot about Bumi. We really are missing some key moments for Ikki, Jinora, and Milo, and especially Senna. We don't know her at all without some of these scenes, and even Tonrok, we don't learn about his backstory. So there's some really important stuff that goes on in the first half of book 2, even though, yes, it's not as dramatic or intense as the second half from beginnings onwards. It's still really well done, because you get some really real and emotional family moments here, as Korra, like, some of the scenes that you get with Senna and Korra and her mother, are amazing, as, like, you kind of see kind of Korra confront her mother about the decisions that they made with regards to keeping her kind of more secluded, locked up when she was younger. And they just talk about how, Korra being the Avatar wasn't just a kind of thing that affected Korra's life, it also affected their life as well, because they planned to just live a happy life once Tonrok came to live in the south and raise a family. And that kind of was twisted on its head when Korra turned out to be the Avatar, because they kind of realized that one day Korra would have to kind of almost kind of leave them, and they wouldn't need her. She wouldn't need them anymore, and she'd just be required to be the Avatar. But I like how this is the moment where kind of Korra realizes that, you know, the kind of I suppose trying to do so much stuff on her own. The problem with that, and that she then realizes that no, I will always need you guys, but you don't have to be so protective of me anymore. And it's a nice resolution. There fundamentally isn't a major problem with Korra and her parents, so they don't play it up that way. Even Korra and Tonrock's issues, I like that. Ultimately, what it comes down to is, with regards to Korra, is that she starts to suspect her father is responsible for the kidnap attempt on Unalaq, and then when she finds out that he wasn't responsible, she kind of has this shocked moment, like, I suspected that my father was willing to do this. Like, who am I anymore? That sort of thing. And then she went to apologize, and you have that great scene where she admits that she'll always need her parents. That was really strong. And then on the kind of Tenzin side of things, you have him have those individual episodes where he has those side plots with each of his children, with Milo and the lemurs, Iki and the kind of tea party with the sky bison, and then the one with Jinora is more about the guide. The one with Iki is actually pretty important because she, in many ways, addresses the theme of the first few episodes with regards to family, and just saying how, yeah, sometimes it's difficult to be in a family. You get angry, you get frustrated, but you are still family. You still care about these people, and how to use the analogy of kind of the little sky bison fighting to kind of show that. And she kind of teaches her father something from that more innocent and kind of simple viewpoint, and how Tenzin learning that kind of helps him to deal with Korra later on, and how his what he learns from his own kids helps him with his relationship with his siblings, which is addressed as well, and that's really pretty well done as well. That you can get to know a little bit about Kaya and Boomy, and they're fun characters, but just I really wanted to make it clear that the theme of family is something that is very kind of heavily addressed early on, and in those early episodes you kind of see that Unalaq doesn't really have a lot to do with Eska and Desna. You don't really see many scenes of him talking to the two of them, so you don't really see a lot of their relationship because he's not a family focused character in the book. So I like that. Next up, I suppose some of the other characters that have good arcs in this book. It's not just Korra. Jinora kind of makes the big jump up from being a minor character to kind of being this kind of supporting character who's almost a main character. And this continues into book 3, not so much in book 4, but it's a really good jump. Because again, coming back to her arc with her father, you really have this really nice kind of idea of just, in that episode, The Guide, Tenzin realizing that he's kind of been training his whole life to eventually guide the next avatar as their spiritual guide into the spirit world. And then at this moment, he has the opportunity to do that and help Korra, but he can't. He's not spiritual enough. But his daughter is. And he has to kind of accept that his daughter is more spiritual than him, and as a father accept that she's going to have to do these dangerous things to help Korra, to help the world. And that's really strong because it again gets across that Tenzin is not Aang, he is himself, he's different. And it also gets across that he and his arc in this book is kind of him accepting the fact that he's not going to be Korra's spiritual guide, but he can be her kind of personal guide. He can just be a mentor to her, even not in a spiritual way. And that's the importance of that episode, The Guide, and just showing that, okay, Korra's got a new guide in Jinora as her spiritual guide, but she's still got all these other guides like Tenzin. And so I really like Jinora's arc, and she has a really important moment at the end when she comes back and kind of implants the kind of some of the light energy within Vatu, and helps the rebirth of Rava towards the end, and gives kind of Korra hope in the final battle. So she's important at the end as well, so I like that. Bolin has a really important arc this book as well, really comes into his own after having a more subdued, subtle arc in book 1, where, you know, he becomes a mover star, he saves the president, and just really proves how strong he is on his own. He really becomes a hero on and off screen is kind of what his arc is about, and that's really well done. Final major point I want to make is just the spirit stuff that you learn in this book about the universe as well as the origin of the Avatar. This book, quite simply, is the book where we get the most world building about the Avatar universe out of any book of Korra or Avatar. It just is. Just that origin of the Avatar story, those 2 episodes, beginnings part 1 and part 2, in addition to A New Spiritual Age, those 3 episodes actually tell us the most we ever learn about basically the Avatar world, just in regards to how the spirit stuff works and so on. They are amazing episodes by themselves. Like, the origin of the Avatar story is amazing because it's 44 minutes where you are introduced to and see Wan die on screen. Yet he is a really amazing character, to the point where when we did our the site book 2 Spirit Awards, Wan won best character for the book, and that's impressive for only 44 minutes of screen time. And yeah, it's just amazing. Like, the origin of the Avatar, as you've probably seen if you followed my YouTube channel for a while, is something that I love to talk about. I have a couple of videos of just discussing that topic in general. And I'd even done a fan fiction on my thoughts on what the origin of the Avatar story was. But what I'd always left out was the relationship between the Avatar spirit and the person who becomes the first Avatar. I'd always thought about the technicalities of it, specifically how it happens, but I'd never given much thought to the actual relationship between the 2 characters. And these 2 episodes in many ways focus on that relationship, and it's amazing because rather than the spirit being the all-knowing one and teaching the human, it's kind of the other way around, in that Wan teaches Rava to not look down on humans and to respect humans for what they can do for the world. And Wan teaches Rava an important lesson and teaches her to have hope and never give up and stuff like that. Because towards the end of these episodes, she is the one who is kind of like, we're never going to win in harmonic convergence, and Wan is the one who gives her confidence going into that final battle. And then when Wan is actually dying at the end of the episode, she is the one who helps Wan through a moment of kind of, we failed. Because it's a really shocking moment that you actually have in that episode when you realize that, wait, what? The first Avatar didn't bring peace to the world? That it actually something that's happened as the Avatar cycle went on. But it's at that moment in Wan's death that the Avatar cycle actually begins. Because Rava kind of has accepted kind of Wan's ideology that they're never going to give up, and so she decides at that moment that she's going to be with Wan for all of his lifetimes. They're never going to give up, and that sets into play the Avatar cycle, because it sets into play that Wan, literally every Avatar after Wan is a direct reincarnation of Wan, even though they're different people. So that's really cool. Not to mention all the other stuff you learn about the world in those episodes, about the line turtles helping humans, the way the line turtles are ultimately responsible for giving humans bending. Wan is responsible for like the people who eventually became the Fire Nation, becoming the Fire Nation, and how the Air Nomad tattoos initially were based on the markings on the air line turtle, and then as the line turtles left the world, they developed into doing their tattoos based off the sky bison. It's just amazing episodes to go that far back in history and learn so much. And then in terms of the spirit side of things, you learn about the balance between light and dark and how that affects spirits, and how it specifically affects Vatu and Rava, and also how what am I saying here? And also how an avatar being in the spirit world, their emotions affect the spirit world itself. You look back on Avatar after looking at book 2 and how developed the spirit world is, and you go, wow, they almost like were bad and shouldn't have introduced the spirit world as a concept when they did, because they didn't explore it very well. Like 107 in Avatar, the first episode the spirit world is introduced, is confusing when you look back on it now because of the technicalities that are involved there. But I love how book 2 handles that sort of stuff. So yeah, I'm pretty much going to bring the video to an end there, you know. This is a video where I definitely want you guys, if you disagree with me or agree with me, to post in the comments just what your thoughts were on book 2. I know I am in a minority in terms of someone who thinks this book is my favourite, and I don't really expect people to be with me on that. I suppose what I defend book 2 for is more that I often just in general, it seems like the consensus about book 2 is that it's the worst book of Korra. That I don't agree with. That I can't agree with, that book 2 is bad or anything like that. I can't accept that. Because I think it's good. It does so many things so well. It has problems like all of the books of Avatar do and Korra. But it does some of the things it does so well that I can't bring it down so much with the criticisms I have. Like another criticism I actually completely forgot up to now. People criticize this book for having a secondary animation studio, Studio Pierrot. Now, I've talked about this in the past before, but I can't really criticize the book too much for it because so many of the books of Avatar and Korra also have secondary animation studios. Like Avatar, does I think it's a lot of fans don't know that Avatar: The Last Airbender has 3 different animation studios. Studio Mir, as far as I'm aware, it was formed from the main animation studio on Avatar, which was JM Animation. So basically, Studio Mir, that's how they also have experience on Avatar, through JM Animation. Now, they were not the only animation studio on Avatar. In book 1 and 2, we also had Dior Movie. Now, they were not the best animation studio. If you see an episode of Avatar and it has lesser animation, it's probably done by Dior Movie. In book 3, they got rid of Dior Movie and instead brought in Moy Animation, who were better than Dior Movie but still not as good as JM Animation. So Avatar, over its history, has a consistent consistent in that it has kind of various animation studios, is not the most consistent. Even book 3 and 4, when Studio Mir came back on board after book 2, they brought in Studio Reve to help with the workload, and they're probably not as good as Studio Mir. So it's not really a problem I have. Yes, Studio Pierrot are not as good as Studio Mir, and Studio Reve are not as good as Studio Mir, but it's not that bad. I think because we were waiting so long for book 2, and because we'd heard about the animation change so long in advance, everyone picked it apart when it eventually came out. And yes, sure, you can show me screenshots of all these certain characters not looking the best, but then I can just go to you like, hey, let's look at book 1, Studio Mir, 6-finger Lin Bei Fong, and all these other little errors that there are with Studio Mir's animation. All animation studios make mistakes no matter how good or bad they are. We should be praising the fact that Studio Pierrot came on board, because they came on board at a time in production on Korra when all of the creators of Avatar, Mike Bryan, Joaquin Dos Santos, will tell you that working on book 2 Spirits was one of the most taxing processes in their lives because of the drama surrounding animation studios. Let's not forget that as much as we love to praise Studio Mir, they specifically chose not to do the animation for book 2 Spirits in the first place, which is why Studio Pierrot had to come on board. And that may explain why the animation at points isn't the best with Pierrot, because they had to come on very quickly. The reason why book 2 took so long to come out after book 1 is with 15 months is because of that animation studio issue. Mir came back on later on to protect their I suppose reputation, which is great, but you know, we got to give Pierrot credit. They're used to doing animes with a more simple art style, and they came onto one of the most complicated shows on TV, and I think they did a pretty good job, all things considering. So I can't criticize Pierrot or the animation of Korra all that much, because I think I don't really notice it that much. I notice it like a scene here or there, but I don't really notice it that much for the whole part. So that's the video for book 2 Spirits. Next week I'm going to be doing the video for book 3 Change. But yeah, in the comments let me know what your thoughts were on book 2 Spirits. Do you agree with me, disagree with me? Did I open your eyes to certain parts about book 2 that was good? And yeah, sorry about the kind of bad editing on this video or stuff like that if it's a little bit inconsistent. I did have to do it in kind of parts because of problems with my camera, but hopefully that won't be a problem in future videos. It just so happened that the video about my favourite book of Korra happened to be the one I had problems recording. But yep, that's the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.